Today is another book review day, and the weather outside is so miserable that the only thing that you can do with yourself right now is read. We have had such a lovely summer, and even the first week of October was beautiful. I couldn't believe how warm and sunny and lovely it was. But today we've got the rain, and it's that big fat rain, or I like to call it fat rain, that bounces when it hits the ground and it just soaks you, and it's just horrible and it's cold. And I've been out 3 times today. I don't know why. Well, one was to take Lily for a walk. And I've just been soaked, and I'm so cold, and I'm sitting here shivering in a cardigan. But with the weather like this, the best thing you can do is sit at home and read. So this week I have been reading Flowers in the Attic by Virginia Andrews. I know it's going to sound silly. I didn't realise this was a book. Maybe about a year ago, I don't know, a while ago, I saw a film on Netflix. I was just flicking through just to see what was on there, and just something caught my interest with it. I think it's one of those made-for-TV movies. I'm not sure, but it was one of those kind of awful 80s films. And I quite enjoyed it. Something about it just really caught my attention. It's quite a horrific, traumatic, strange story that that you can't help but be interested in. And again, like I've said before, it's something about the human psyche and why people behave the way they behave is something that really interests me. So I was really surprised when somebody came into the library and they'd ordered this book, and I saw it and I was like, oh my goodness, I need to read this book, because the film is just wow, and the book is just even wower, if that's even a word. I don't want to compare the book to the film, because as we all know, films just never do the book's justice, and I know it's just based on the book, but the book is just so brilliant. It's so haunting and disturbing and frightening and sad, and it's just so many emotions run all over the place reading this book. And when I got it, I just had to read it straight away, and I've not been able to put it down. It is such a gripping read for all the wrong reasons. It is such an awfully sad story, and surprisingly, just kind of reading, inside the front cover, Virginia Andrews says it's based on a true story, and I did a little bit of research to see if I could find out what this true story was, but I couldn't really find anything concrete, so I don't know if it is based on a true story or not. But if it is, that is even more sad than, if this was complete fiction. But anyway, I will read you the blurb as usual and tell you a bit about the story. Okay, so on the back it starts. Up in the attic, 4 secrets are hidden. 4 blonde, beautiful, innocent little secrets struggling to stay alive. Chris, Kathy, Corey and Carrie have perfect lives until a tragic accident changes everything. Now they must wait, hidden from view in their grandparents' attic, as their mother tries to figure out what to do next. But as days turn into weeks and weeks into months, the siblings endure unspeakable horrors and face the terrifying realisation that they might not be let out of the attic after all. This is the first book in a series, and I'm not really one to read series of books. I tend to bore after the first one, but I think I won't read the second book straight away. I do like to give myself a break, but I think I will carry on reading this, because you really need to find out what happens to these children. It is horrible. So, to start with, these 4 children, all whose names begin with C, does irritate me a little bit, but not enough to not bother reading the book. I did find it a little bit frustrating, but that's really beside the point. So these 4 children, Chris is the oldest. He's the oldest boy. I think he's 15 when the book starts. Oh, I can't remember off the top of my head, but he's a teenager. And Kathy is a couple of years younger than him. And then the twins, Corey and Carrie, they're about 4 or 5. And they've got quite a good life. Their parents are fairly rich. They're not super rich, but they're not super poor either. They're very comfortable. They can have the nice things that they want, nice clothes. They live in a nice house and all that kind of stuff. So, they're fairly well off. And one day it's their father's birthday, and they're at home and they're preparing the house. They're having a party. Friends have come round and they're waiting for him to come home. And there's a knock on the door, and they think it's their father, and it's the police to say that he has died in a car crash. So they love him so much. They really, really do. He's a great father, and they really love him, and they're so traumatized and shocked and saddened by the death of their father. And because he's died, they don't have money coming in, and all the money starts to run out. And the mother, she just doesn't know what to do. She doesn't have a very strong relationship with her parents. Something happened, which I won't say because that's a very big part of the story, so I won't say a thing about that. But something happened, and she was ostracised from the family. Her family didn't want anything more to do with her. They kicked her out of home. She was taken out of her father's will, and so she didn't really have anyone to turn to once her husband had died. She bit the bullet, and she contacted her parents and asked if she could stay with them just to get herself back on her feet. And her plan was, her family are very rich, extremely rich, and her plan was to not worm her way back into the family, but to regain her parents' trust, their love, so that she could then be written back into the will, so that when he died, she would inherit all this money. And she told this to her children and said that they were extremely rich and they'd be able to buy anything they wanted. They could have jewels and clothes and all the toys and books and games and everything that their hearts could desire, because the grandparents were extremely rich. The grandfather was on his deathbed, and the mother said that if she could get him to love her again, and he wrote her back into the will, he'd soon die, and that money would all be theirs. And the children were just amazed by all of this. So they agreed to go along with her to the grandparents' house. She didn't want her father, the grandfather, to know about the grandchildren straight away, because she knew that what had happened in the past had really affected the family, torn it apart, and she needed time to ease herself back into the family, ease herself back into their trust, into their hearts, and the children would just kind of aggravate the situation to start with. So the grandmother, who did know about the grandchildren, put them in a room in their extremely huge mansion with hundreds of servants, put them in a room right kind of at the back, out of the way, just so that they didn't get spotted by anyone or noticed or anything like that. And the mother told them that they'd only be in there a very short while, and the children were happy with that. They didn't mind, and the mother kept on insisting that the grandfather was going to die soon. The grandmother, she was a very strict religious woman, and she had certain rules that she wanted the children to abide by. And it wasn't, cheerful, friendly rules. She was extremely, extremely mean, extremely cruel, and would punish if anything was broken, and not just a telling off, but severe punishments. So there's lots of things that they can and can't do, but they're not that bothered really, because they're only going to be in that room for a short while. They're going to be let out soon, and they're going to be able to enjoy themselves. And the mother would come and visit them, and they'd say, "Oh, when can we come out?" And she'd say, "Oh, soon. Grandfather's nearly dead." And she'd bring them gifts, and she'd bring them toys, and she'd bring them food and everything. And it got to the point where the children were staying in there longer and longer and longer. And they kept asking, "When can we leave? When can we leave?" And she'd say, "Oh, soon, soon, my love, soon, soon." And she would be very loving and caring towards the children. But after a while, she didn't come very regularly. And when she did, she would bring them gifts, but that would be the only sort of love or affection that she'd show them. She wouldn't hug them. Sometimes she wouldn't look at them. She grew distant from her children. And because the mother grew distant, a strange family situation started to appear within this room, with the twins being the children and Chris and Kathy being the parents. And it's a very strange setup. The older children grew up and learned how all the responsibilities that come along with being a parent when their children are sick. You know, when they need to learn things, they had to be their teachers, they had to be their doctors, they had to be the caregivers. But the younger ones, the twins, really regressed back into really young childhood. I know they were young, they were 4 or 5 years old, but they really regressed. Their language skills were stunted, and also physically, not being able to go outside, not being able to enjoy the sunshine. They weren't growing. They were very short, they were very slim, they just weren't developing the way that children should develop. In this room, there was a door to an attic that contained absolutely, you know, amazing things, clothes and books and just loads and loads of stuff, just kind of trash really that the family didn't want, but they put it up in this attic. And so the children could occupy themselves by playing games, reading, doing little bits and pieces. There were paints, they could do painting, they could make crafts, but they just kind of found themselves stuck in this room with this attic, and their mother not coming back for them. She'd come back, but she just wouldn't. She'd tell them all about the lavish lifestyle that she was now living. She'd come in with expensive clothes and jewellery and bring them gifts, and they'd say, but we don't want these gifts, we want to go outside, we want to play, we want to be children again, we want, you know, we want what children want. And then she'd call them ungrateful, and it's the relationships just all shift out of what is normal in a family. And oh my goodness, I cannot say any more about the story because it climbs and climbs and climbs and reaches such a it's such a horrific climax. And I am speechless with this. I mean, if this is based on a true story, then it is just absolutely shocking, like I say. And even if it isn't, for somebody to come up with this idea for a story, if it is complete fiction, is just, again, shocking. It really, really is. It's such a claustrophobic book. You feel with these children. You're stuck in this room. You're stuck inside your own head. The book is written through the voice of Kathy, the oldest girl, and she just talks about how difficult it is, especially for her as a young woman. She's growing up, her body's changing, and she doesn't know what to do with it because her mother's not there to talk to. Her mother's not there to you know, as a shoulder to cry on, as someone to console her, as someone to cuddle her when, like I say, all these things change in her body. Chris doesn't have a father figure. He doesn't have anyone to tell him about his changes and what he should expect, and everything. It's just so off. It's just really, really horrible. And I think this is something that everybody should read. It's something that you don't want to put down because you're hoping along with these children that everything's going to end up well. You're hoping that the grandfather will die and they can finally leave. I'm not saying if he does or if he doesn't, and if they do or if they don't. I don't want to give the story away because I really think that everybody should read it. So as long as you're not too claustrophobic and as long as you're not too scared of having doors locked behind you so that you can't get out, I think this is a book that everybody should read. And like I say, I'm going to read the next one. I think it's called Petals in the Wind. It's the next one. Like I say, I won't read it for a while. I need to digest this one and release my mind from this awful, awful book of captivity and not torture. It's mental torture rather than physical torture for the reader, as well as these poor children in this room. So, Flowers in the Attic, yes, read the book. Do not watch the awful 1980s made-for-TV movie. That will just ruin it for you. But the book is definitely something to savour, at least. So, if you would like to hear more of my book reviews or learn about my writing world, I give some writing advice, then please subscribe to my channel, where I will try and put out new videos each week, depending how quickly I read my books. And I'm off to read another one, or start another one now, in the comfort of my nice warm home while it's raining outside. So I hope you're having a better weather day than I am, and I will see you soon. Bye bye.